So good afternoon, everyone. This is Jennifer Hilliard, and I am the Director of Philanthropy and Legal Affairs at Leading Age. I would like to welcome you to our second quarterly Lunch and Learn program of the year. And today our topic is going to be ethical fundraising with seniors. And our presenter is David Kremer, spelled Kremer. I made a spelling error when I wrote it on the calendar request, and I apologize profusely for that. Anyway, David has 22 years of professional fundraising experience, with 17 of those spent helping seniors to achieve their philanthropic dreams. David has raised more than $28 million and also uh, has experience in fundraising for religious and educational institutions. He's a longtime member of AFP, which, by the way, has sponsored several of our deep dives at the Leading Age annual meeting. And David has served on the board for the Southeast Wisconsin chapter of AFP. Uh, you will probably recognize David's name from our listserv, where he is a frequent participant in the conversations and has provided members with untold amount of guidance on issues that are of importance to our group. So I'd like to welcome David, and we'll get started with our program.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks to Leading Age for hosting, and thank you to you for your interest in the topic. You heard about me and Jennifer's kind introduction there. Hopefully, along those 17 years, I may have accidentally learned a few things that hopefully I can share with you today. And when I say good afternoon, I'm in Florida, and it's afternoon here, but I realize it might be morning where you are, so good morning to those of you. So a couple of goals that we have today. Hopefully you will leave today's session being able to either create your own set of standards on how you can deal with seniors when you're fundraising, or you can simply use ours or adapt it however you'd like. We'd also like to accomplish today that you'll understand situations are not always simple, but while they're not always that way and there's no easy solution, there are some action steps that we can take. And so hopefully, based on those, you might be able to adjust some of your own actions or opinions.
Hi, David.
So,
I've gotten
yeah.
an announcement or a message from the audience that you need to speak a little louder.
A little louder.
There we
Okay.
go.
I will try to do that. Okay, I will speak a little louder. Thank you for mentioning that to Jennifer. Today is going to be kind of a fast day. Some things we'll move through very quickly. Others we'll spend some time on. Especially applying the knowledge that we've learned to our day-to-day activities. That's what it's all about. So we'll discuss aging a little bit, how it affects our efforts as fundraisers, the research that went into this effort, but mostly we'll spend time on what we can do based on that, and then you can see we've left plenty of time for questions as well. When I give this presentation to groups that are not made up entirely of seniors, people fundraising for seniors, that is, we ask some poll questions. So we'll have to do it silently on our web seminar today. Obviously, this would apply to all of us. How many deal with donors 70 and older? That would be all of us. And how many of us have ever experienced that little twitch, that little sense of uncomfort when dealing with one of our older donors, that maybe they didn't really understand the conversation the same way we did, or even worse, that we don't even know what planet they're on. So that happens from time to time. And in that situation, the last question would be, how many of you felt comfortable that you knew exactly what to do and how to handle that situation? Now, you've all been hearing what's on this slide for years. The stats are from Crescendo Software. And they've been telling us forever that a lot of money is going to change hands, and we should ask for it. Many times we're told at seminars that, when's the best time to talk to people about a planned gift, and somebody will say, wait till the kids are out of college, so 55 to maybe 75. As you probably know, working in the industry, 75 is an awfully low number. Some of our residents don't even move in until they're in their 80s or 90s. So certainly don't give up when someone hits 75. People make changes in their estate plans well into their 80s and 90s. But what we hear about when they talk to us about these numbers and the transfer of wealth is that they have to give that money to someone. And so we might as well ask. But we don't talk about the fact that these donors are changing as well, both physically and mentally. So we may need to look at how we approach them, and that may have to change as well. There's a story of the man who, with his wife, was having trouble remembering things, and it was driving him crazy. And he said to his wife, I think there's something wrong with me. I have to go to the doctor. This is ridiculous. I get up, I go into the next room, I can't even remember why I did that. So the wife says, oh, come on, dear, we're just getting older, and that's what happens. You don't need to go to the doctor. He said, no, it's really bothering me. I'm going to go to the doctor. So he makes an appointment, goes to his doctor, and tells the doctor, I'm just having trouble remembering things, and I just want to make sure that I'm hitting on all cylinders here. So the doctor does some tests and comes back and says, there's nothing wrong with you. I mean, we're all just getting older, and it's hard to remember things sometimes. No, doc, he says, you got to help me. There's got to be something you can do for me. I get up and I go into the next room. I can't even remember why I went there. So the doctor, trying to be helpful, says, well, why don't you keep a little notepad in your pocket and a pencil or a pen and write things down. That way, if you get up from one room and go to the next, you can look at the notepad and remember. He thought, that's a good idea. I'll do that. So he goes home and tells his wife all about his great doctor's appointment, shows her the new notepad he has and the pen, and says, this is what we're going to do. And she's, well, I'm not doing that. You can do that if you want, but, I think it's silly. So later on that evening, they're sitting in the living room, and he says, I'm a little hungry. I'd like some ice cream. And she said, oh, I do too. I'll tell you what, I'll go to the kitchen, and I'll get us each a bowl of ice cream. And he says, wait a minute, before you go, write yourself a note and say that you want to get ice cream. And she says, oh, that's ridiculous. I can walk to the kitchen and remember that we want to get ice cream. So she goes in the kitchen, and he keeps watching TV. And she comes back a couple of minutes later. But interestingly enough, she has a plate with her, not a bowl. And on the plate is a piece of toast, and it's got peanut butter on it. And so the husband gets very upset, and he says, you see, I told you should have written something down because you forgot the jelly. So we all have little issues and things with memory, regardless of what age we are. But this changes and becomes more frequent as we get older. So we can joke about it and laugh about it, hopefully together with our donors at times. But it does bring up issues and things that we have to deal with. I had a second visit not too long ago with a donor to talk about a charitable gift annuity. And I'd already met with them, explained everything. This was a follow-up visit, so they knew all about how they worked, and we had talked about an amount and all that. And so I went back to meet and went over it briefly again, and the donor said, well, Stephen, this is all new to me. I don't remember ever having talked to you about this before. And are you the one in charge of dining? Because lunch yesterday was awful. And so you get these responses, and you think, wait a minute, I already met with this person, and they were crystal clear. Now what do I do? They don't even remember having talked to me, at least at this moment, and they think my name is Steve. So we find ourselves in awkward situations. What if they made a pledge and they don't remember it? What kinds of records should we keep? Lots of questions that come up. So that's kind of what propelled us to say, as an organization at Santa Fe Senior Living, that we should try and have some set of standards of practice as to how we deal with these situations. And when I started, I thought this will be easy. Probably something already exists. Somebody's already done this. Well, we looked high and low and couldn't find any. So I thought, well, it'll still be easy. I can probably check with some experts, and they can tell me what to do. I'll just see how the Alzheimer's Association suggests dealing with these issues, and we'll be done. Well, that was wrong, too. The Alzheimer's Association has a document called Respect for Autonomy, and in that document they say assessments of capacity can be common sense. Well, that's good. That's about my pay grade is common sense, so I can handle that. It's black and white. That's what I wanted to find. However, they say, an assessment may not be definitive. So never mind, here comes the gray into the black and white equation. Their document continues, quote, because a person may fluctuate in ability to understand and reason, even the person with somewhat advanced dementia may have periods of lucidity that allow for significant decision making. Say, what? That's from the Alzheimer's Association. Let me read it again. If this was Family Feud and they asked for the top 5 answers, this wouldn't be on there. Even the person with somewhat advanced dementia may have periods of lucidity that allow for significant decision making. So wait a minute. If I'm on Earth and I think my donor's on Mars or somewhere else, what's the issue? Isn't it easy? You probably have guesses, though, from your own experience on what could cause their confusion other than perhaps dementia or other issues. You may have noticed from time to time that changes in their reactions to you can be based on a change or a problem with a new medicine. That can affect how they feel, how they are reacting. It could be simply because they're not sleeping well. I do a lot of traveling to our 3 communities that we have, and sometimes I wake up and it's dark in the hotel room and I don't even know where I am. So I can certainly understand if they're not sleeping well, having a little sense of confusion. The experts tell us stress and anxiety can also be what might be going on if your conversation isn't making sense, or it simply could be a hearing impairment. I called a woman last week who wanted to come to a seminar that we were putting on, and we didn't have room, but I said, look, if we have a cancellation, I will call you back. So we did, and I called her back and said, this is David, was calling back about this seminar. Well, who is this again? This is David. Remember we talked from the foundation office about the seminar? Oh, yeah, she says, I remember that. I can't come, she said. I said, well, yeah, I mean, remember we talked and we didn't have room, and but now we do. And she said, now, I don't understand. What are you talking about? And so I had to go through, and it took quite a while. And then she confessed she just woke up, and I caught her off guard. And so that was the cause of the confusion in that case. So as we looked to try to research and find out what we could learn from the experts, we also looked at AARP, and they've done some fantastic work with the Financial Planning Association, or FPA. They have some great tips that they work together to create for people in the financial planning industry, but they are tips on how to deal effectively and appropriately with seniors, and we borrowed significantly from what they had created. If you choose to set up your own process, standards, or guidelines, your state might also have some helpful information. And also you might choose to look up the Elder Investment Fraud and Financial Exploitation Prevention Program. That's a mouthful. Maybe they need one of those little acronyms, EIFFEPP, EFFIP. Yeah, no, that doesn't work. You may find some of the material that they have enlightening, though, and there is a link in our document to their site for you. It's very helpful information that you can share with others. We also looked at leading age in our research, which you're all familiar with, and they had done some articles and had some presentations given in the past, and we looked over that material as well. We also thought it would be a good idea to look at universities in our state to see if they had any research or knowledge that could be helpful. That helped us in putting together the document. Some other sources you can find to help. FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, has some documents that we also found quite helpful, and there are links to them in our document. You might have state statutes that could apply to what we're talking about. So if you have an attorney that you work with, perhaps on a planned giving committee, maybe you can ask them if there's any laws in your state that deal with this. I know Florida has a special statute dealing with potential exploitation of elderly adults. So that was another source. We're not the only ones talking about this issue. We believe, the first ones to come up with, a set of standards of practice. But a gentleman that was a great help was Robert Hoffman. He's a CFRE and Senior Director of Development at the University of Minnesota, the Duluth School of Fine Arts there. He's been working on the issue and has given several talks about it to CASE. He was featured in the Chronicle of Philanthropy. And he was kind enough to review our standards, offered some great input and suggestions, particularly on what to do once we're no longer soliciting a donor. And he talked about moving them into instead a relationship of what he called respectful stewardship. So we liked that. In addition, we conducted 3 focus groups, one at each of our senior living communities in Florida, with seniors themselves to gain their input and ideas on the proper way to handle things, how they'd like to be approached, how they think we should handle difficult situations. And that's something you could do as well, perhaps taking these standards that we've developed and seeing what your residents might suggest you change. And I'd be thrilled to get responses to that. So if any of you have suggestions and input, I'd love to hear that as we go forward. You could send me an email. We also went to our planned giving committees over the course of a year, taking several different drafts to them. They made suggestions and had input. And so that really is the research that went into over 18 months what we eventually came up with. So let's discuss how we can fundraise ethically with aging donors and have some actual steps that we can take to improve the process and ensure that we're doing the right thing. You know, we joke sometimes about event fundraising, especially dinner auctions. The joke being that the auction can't start until late enough in the evening when enough wine is poured to, shall we say, encourage bidding. So I guess we're joking that we really don't want them fully aware of that big bid they're making. Well, in our world, it's different. In our world of fundraising for major and planned gifts with our aging donors, we have a responsibility to make sure the donors have the capacity to understand their resources, what parting with them means, and what impact their gift can have. So the document that we came up with is available online. There's a PDF that you can look at any of those websites listed there, and it can be copied and reproduced with credit given. Or you can download it and use it to create your own document, make the changes you think should be made. There's some very helpful links, more than 2 pages of them in the PDF to all of our different sources. You might find that interesting as well. And so when we put this on our website, we have a paragraph that talks about how the issue is very important to us. We want to take the high road, and because we value the trusting relationships that we have with our donors and their families, this is something that we felt was important. They might not ever click on the document, and that's fine, but it's there, and we think and we hope that makes a point in and of itself. So I'd like to follow the same format that the actual document is in as we talk a little bit about what we can actually do. So in the document under A, we note obviously that there's already some great ethical standards by the AFP, CGP, and the American Council on Gift Annuities, as well as the Donor Bill of Rights, and we adhere to those things. So there's already some good stuff out there. Nothing, though, that specifically deals with the growing issue of aging donors. Now, all of us in the audience know this is a big deal because that's who we're dealing with. But every charity, regardless of if it's the arts or education or healthcare, they're all going to be dealing with this as that huge bubble of baby boomers continues to age. So we want to make sure we always take the high road, obviously, and act in the best interest of our donors. Attorney Mark Ensign of Amarillo, Texas, has written on ethical issues in the elderly. And he says business and medical decisions have lasting effects, and we have a duty to focus on the elders' needs, both present and future, when it comes to using and protecting their assets. Now, our document doesn't claim to have all the answers, but we do hope it directs some needed national attention on this important issue, and we're sure that you could have valuable input as well. We want to use our best judgment based on education and training, and I think that's the key. It's not just, oh, well, do what you think is best. It's, yes, do what you think is best, but based on your education and training in terms of dealing with the elderly. In a piece by Diane Molvig in the October 2007 issue of Leading Age magazine, there was an article on this topic. They talked to Barbara Levy, who was at the time the International Ethics Committee for AFP chair from Tucson, Arizona. And she says, be vigilant about the welfare of the donor and suggest that the donor consult with their own professional advisor. I'm sure many of you already do that. Tom Hoffman was chair of Leading Age Philanthropy Committee at the time of that article, president of Ohio Presbyterian Retirement Services Foundation, and he says always stay faithful to the donor, making sure you carry out what they wanted. Good advice. They also talked to Mary Wesley, Vice President of Development at United Church Homes and Services in Newton, North Carolina. And she says, I love this one, if this was your mom donating the money, how would you handle it? Now, obviously, that assumes you like your mom, but that's a great way to look at it. How would you want your own parent that you do love treated? And so we need to be open and transparent and be willing to share information. Many of you have probably also heard of a woman by the name of Teepa Snow. It's a funny spelling on her name. Her first name is Teepa, T-E-E-P-A. Last name Snow, like what it does in Wisconsin, where I used to live. Teepa Snow, and she has a website, teepasnow.com. She's come up with a really different and refreshing and new approach to people that are dealing with any one of the various dementias that are out there. She calls it a positive approach to care, and there's some excellent reading material and training that she offers that can help us to have an educated best judgment that we use. And so she's trying to make a difference for those with dementia one mind at a time, she says on her website. She classifies the changes that people see due to dementia as different gemstones to focus on their ability rather than their loss. She has a hand-over-hand technique that can calm down people that you deal with, and she helps train you to make you aware of different clues that they give you as well. That's the only one that Teepa Snow that is not mentioned in the document. So her website, again, is teepasnow.com, T-E-E-P-A, snow.com. So let's look at the document again. Under Section B, we also talked about, one of the things that we can do under Roman numeral 5 there is to be a resource for our aging donors. We can show them we're on their side, we're on their team, we get these issues, and we're trying to help them with this messy aging process. Whether we like it or not, fundraisers are sometimes equated to used car salesmen to some. And yet you and I know this actually is a profession, and we're not out to rip off anyone or to trick anyone. And so if there's steps that we can take to prove that and to show that we really care about them, then that's something we have to do. So part of our process is we want to make sure that we educate our constituents on decision making and dementia, dementia and aging in general. We also provide information to them on elder abuse, including financial abuse of elders. And we're also trying to promote 5 steps they can take to avoid issues by addressing them ahead of time. And so we call them the 5 habits of highly effective seniors. The first one is to have a power of attorney for finances. You may call that something else in your state. Second one, simple, have a will, trust, or estate plan. It's recommended by the Alzheimer's Association to have one, and we suggest in our document as well that you use either an elder law attorney or an estate planning attorney. Many of you have probably heard, as I have from donors over the years, oh, we have a family attorney who's always done all of our things. I'll talk to him about it. And you say, oh, well, that's nice. Who is it? Well, it's actually our uncle. It's Uncle Louie, and he's a divorce lawyer. Well, that's wonderful. Uncle Louie may not know anything about estate planning. And if it's uncomfortable, one way you can address that with donors is to say that both AARP and the Financial Planners Association recommend that when they're putting together a will, trust, or estate plan, they use an elder law or estate planning attorney. So blame them if that makes it easier for you to discuss. Power of attorney for health care is another one. In Florida, they've got some different laws. It's called a designation of a health care surrogate, someone that can make decisions for you, along with having a living will, of course. And we recommend that while they have no capacity issues mentally, that they get relationships in place now with good people they can trust. And finally, that they involve and inform their family as they're comfortable, especially where is everything. We have a very wealthy client at one of our locations passed away, and the daughters called and said, you know, this is a mess. Dad had all these life insurance policies we didn't know anything about. We don't know where the papers are. And so it's something that families deal with, and if we can help avoid that, then that's great. You want to talk about 14 specific steps we can take, and I'm watching the clock as well. But first, under Roman numeral 6, remember the Alzheimer's Association said, diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease alone is not an indication of decision-making incapacity. They even point out that false accusations of incapacity, or if we treat them like that, can leave a person feeling worthless and hopeless, and that's not exactly what we want to do as the fundraisers. So we'll talk more about how to deal with that in a minute. However, there is, very rarely, but there is a legal conclusion of incapacity. And so our document states that if we're ever made aware that there's a legal conclusion of incapacity, then we stop the solicitation and we move to respectful stewardship instead. All right, now let's look at these 14 steps. Some of them go very quickly. Others deserve a little explanation. Offer a good location for the meeting. AARP and the Financial Planning Association created a guide for financial planning professionals, and they suggest that meetings take place earlier in the day when a client is more alert. They also advise speaking and enunciating clearly and making sure the location of the meeting is free of background noise and acoustical problems. As our hearing ages, our ability to differentiate between all those sounds gets worse. Mobility issues can also cause you to rethink the meeting location. Make it easy for them. So that one's pretty easy. Ask them if they'd like anyone to join them. That same guide that AARP and FPA put together suggests that you enhance communications during a meeting if an older person is accompanied by a relative or friend who can assist. In addition, FINRA, that Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, in their Regulatory Notice 0743 on senior investors, they suggest asking the customer if they'd like to invite a friend or family member to accompany them to an appointment. So for us, remember those two documents are both advice for financial planners, not for fundraisers. But if we apply that to us, then we would ask them if there's a friend, a family member, or a financial planner, a financial advisor that they'd like to have them join the meeting. And they may or may not, but you've at least offered that. Here's a good one too. Ask directly, especially as you start your relationship with them. You could make it a practice in your first one-on-one meeting with them if they have an executed durable power of attorney or a power of attorney for finances. FINRA in that same notice suggests asking that during an initial meeting, and obviously if they have it in place, then we include that person in any gifting discussions. FINRA tells attorneys, or heard back from attorneys, FINRA heard back from attorneys that told them it's easier to have that conversation about such a sensitive issue as a sort of matter of fact or a matter of routine when they establish a new relationship. So if they do have one, then of course they take that next step and involve that person. Now here's a silly one. Wear a name tag. I don't know, I stare at that picture that hopefully you can see now too, and I don't see it, but apparently if you have macular degeneration, these two guys look a lot alike. Obviously that much older one in front, that's me, is much better looking. But still, I get called Jerry. That's Jerry in the back. He's the younger, handsome guy. And also, who knows, with mumbling on my part or hearing changes on theirs, there can be difficulty in knowing who's who. I've learned that apparently David sounds a lot like Stephen. David? Stephen? I don't know. I don't get that one either, but I do get called Stephen a lot. So the point is this. If you and I struggle to remember names, even of our own kids sometimes, why not make it easy by just wearing a name tag with your first name, large and easy to read, even when you're out to eat or away from the community? And I guarantee you, if you try it, I've been surprised to see how often people look down on your shirt and read that name. So that's one of the steps we took as well. Next one. It's fine if we ask people, how are you feeling today? AARP says 60% of Americans 65 over have some hearing loss, and once we get to 80 or older, that increases to 90%. And we can tell when they have hearing loss if we watch for things like inattentiveness, their head bending to favor one ear, a lack of expression when they're listening to you, or inappropriate or incorrect responses. Those could all be hearing loss issues. It's fine to ask at the beginning of the meeting as a matter of routine if they have any vision or hearing challenges they face. Mrs. Smith, I'm going to send you a letter afterward to follow up on our meeting today. Do you have any difficulty with reading? How's your vision? We also found in our research that there are two fonts that are easier for seniors to read, so we adopted one of them. We use a Georgia font, and we use 14-point font in our communication. We can also ask them how they're feeling. They might tell you they're in pain. Well, if they're in pain, that might not be the best time to ask for a major gift or a planned gift. Vision is another issue. If we can get our eye contact down at their level, that helps with the communication. So if you're meeting with someone in a wheelchair, rather than standing and talking down to them, you get down to their level. As the discussion continues, the Alzheimer's Association has tips for professionals and caregivers. So if you sense during the conversation that there's unease or confusion, they suggest that you meet them where they are. So don't disagree. If all of a sudden they think it's 1967, then you meet them where they are. Respect their thoughts, even if they're incorrect. So I had a woman at a facility in Milwaukee one time grab my arm and say, "Are you my husband?" And so I said, "No, but I'll try to find him," and then redirected her to talk about a different topic. Number 7 is a big one for FINRA. They had problems with financial advisors holding these high-pressure lunches where seniors are told, "You must act now," or "This is a limited time offer." And so it's key to stress that we're professionals too. It's not about our goal or deadline. Sorry to any of the supervisors listening to that. But when we're always keeping the donor's interest at heart, of course we have goals and deadlines, but that's not what it's about. It's about making sure that they have time to consider not only our suggestion, but other options as well. We use a disclaimer in our written follow-up and in any meeting handouts. On ours, we say it's always a good idea, a must in fact, to consult with your own professional advisors before making any decisions about sizable charitable contributions. Many also choose to involve their family in such decisions. You can word it however you want. That's how we word ours, and our sample is in the addendum on the PDF online. Those with dementia, and we may not know, and even family can be in denial, can it sometimes become quite agitated. We've probably all faced that. The Alzheimer's Association has some advice if you're in a situation like that. They say if you appear to be the cause of the problem or you think you're what's upsetting them, that you try to leave that situation, leave the room for a while. And that it's important to validate what they're feeling. So we just called it validate and separate to make it easy to remember. So, number 10, if based on your training you perceive a decline in mental capacity, suspend the discussion. And then the question, is that always the right thing to do? Well, based on that education we spoke of earlier, if it doesn't feel good, then yes, stop. Redirect to a different topic that you can talk about and find a way to end the discussion or end the meeting a little bit later. Interestingly, though, if it's just a single incident, you've had many meetings with this person, they're fine, you've never noticed any problems with them before, but all of a sudden today when you met with them, things were just not clicking. There's a tendency to say, oh, they're not clicking now with Susie or Sam, so I have to cross them off the list. However, that may not be fair to them. Remember that they told us that false accusation, or if we treat them like we think they have dementia, that may make them feel worthless. So confusion, remember, also can be caused by those other things we talked about, lack of sleep, anxiety. So if those things are the cause of this single incident and they can be addressed, perhaps we can continue the discussion at a later time. So don't just write them off after one time. And that surprised me going through this and coming to that conclusion that that's the advice of the experts. I guess I assumed before that, oh, you know, they're not clicking now, so now I need to move them to a different status and not solicit them. Number 11 is kind of funny. It says we take money. We actually like money. We like lots of money. Number 12. A good thing, too, again, thinking of their best interest, is that if we notice a change in a person's condition that you think may be a cause for concern, either for their own mental or physical health or for the health of others, then by all means report this to those who can address it. And in our communities, that could be family, could be a caregiver, staff, etc. So 13 answers the question that 10 asks, I guess. You know, we said if it's one incident, we're following step 10. 13, if we notice there's a pattern of decline, though, in more than one meeting, then that's a good time to discontinue and to note why we've discontinued in the person's record. But again, a single instance, we end that particular discussion, but it may not be that we need to discontinue permanently. And the last one of the 14 steps you can take, just that someone, if they've made a pledge and have declined in their capacity since then, good idea to have a professional advisor or a family member with you when you discuss that with them. Many of you have maybe seen this, but if not, it's worth a little chuckle. We can probably relate to that slide, some of us. A couple other quick points, and then we're right on time for questions after these quick little points. We address issues such as donor acknowledgement, donor recognition, and gift acceptance in different documents. We have different policies for those things, so we did not try to address those in this document. Like you, we comply with HIPAA as it relates to fundraising activity, and we've included messages in our notice of privacy practices for all residents and clients. And those messages make it clear that any information they give us is used by us for marketing as well as fundraising purposes. We do not, at the time we give them the notice of privacy practices, they don't have to sign that yes, they want mailings or no, they don't. Instead, the notice says that every mailing that they get in terms of fundraising will have the opt-out on it. Associates, we do not allow our associates to be present. Associates, that's what we call our employees, when legal documents are signed relating to gifting to us. And we also ask that they not serve as witnesses to such documents. That just opens you up later for questions of undue influence. We also ask that our associates do not serve as durable power of attorney or healthcare surrogate for residents or donors. And we don't allow our own in-house attorneys, which we have as part of our parent company, our larger corporation, to be involved in drawing up the documents that specifically have gifting to us in them. We do, copied this one from the financial industry as well, we do share information about the education and credentials of our associates that are doing fundraising, how our fundraisers are paid, what regulatory oversight there is for our fundraising activities as well. We try to follow up on all, we don't try, we do it, on all of our major and planned gift meetings. We follow up in writing to summarize the meetings and again have that disclaimer in there. And then we keep records of all of our donor contacts, visits, calls, communications. That's good as well if a family would ever come back to you and say, what are you doing with mom or dad? So hopefully you can, after today's discussion and with that PDF, you can use or use the steps that we've come up with or create your own, revise the document, or start all over. It is a complex issue, as you already know, but there are steps we can take, and hopefully some of this information has been at least interesting, if not helpful. Some things you might consider going forward. Are there any changes that you can make based on what we've discussed? Is there anyone you plan to share these standards with? Maybe you could discuss these things with your own staff, your fundraising staff, or other coworkers, your development or planned giving committees, or your boards. So that concludes my notes and presentation. Again, that document is online, and there's links, plenty of helpful links in that PDF. And I'm going to work with Jennifer now and be happy to entertain any questions that you might have. However, that's my dog there. That's Sunshine. She might be more qualified to answer some of them than I am. But we will give it a try. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, David. I'm going to unmute everyone's phones now, and that will allow you to answer or ask a question. So let's see. That didn't seem to work. So
it did say the presenter has unmuted participants.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Anyone care to ask a question? I guess not. We're busy people today. Well, David, I
Yes.
wanted to. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, just that I'd love to hear if people, adjust it or get feedback from residents. I'd love to hear that. My email's on the screen there. They can email me, and would love to hear that kind of thing.
All right. Well, terrific. Thank you so much for presenting to us today. It's a very important subject, and it's good to have a little refresher course every now and again. So, like I said, thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for coming today. And we'll be back. I believe this is June, July, September. We'll be back. So great. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.